Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the very first edition of the Hot Tag of 2013 here on goit.net. I'm Adam Stephen Kelly, and I am joined, as always, by
Ed Kelly. Happy New Year to you all.
And we've got a pretty big show lined up for you today. We're going to be discussing the first few major wrestling events of 2013, upcoming, of course, in the next few weeks. TNA Genesis on pay-per-view, and also WWE's next instalment of the Royal Rumble, one of the big four pay-per-views, and one of my personal favourites. Also, we've had a pretty big edition of Impact just passed, and tomorrow, WWE Monday Night Raw kicks off the year with the likes of the return of The Rock, and much, much more.
Incidentally as well, this week, back in 1999, it was a pretty historic week in the world of wrestling, because it was the week that Mick Foley captured the WWE Championship for the first time, and it was the infamous war, Monday Night Wars, between WWF at the time and WCW. And it was when Tony Schiavone gave away the results of the show and said that, Mick Foley was going to win the title that week, and he said something like, "Oh, that's going to put a lot of butts in seats." And of course, the rest is history, because that was the last week that WCW won the ratings war. Everyone switched over to WWF, and that was perhaps the final nail in the coffin for them.
Absolutely, yeah. Just a one short line, but pretty much changed the landscape of wrestling forever, and very historic. Was that 14 years?
99, yeah, so it's 14 years this week. It was the 4th of January. It was actually the day Raw was shown, but it just goes to show, the one silly thing, if he had maybe have not said that. I mean, I don't think it was actually Schiavone, his input. I think he was told to say it by Eric Bischoff, I should imagine, but just, if he hadn't have said it, would the wrestling landscape be different today? Would WCW still be in business? We'll never know, but interesting to think that was 14 years ago now.
Yeah, certainly an interesting tidbit of history. And Raw this week is going to be a very, very big show indeed, and it does seem that as we kick off the road to WrestleMania, reportedly every Raw is pretty much going to be a stacked show from here on out for the rest of the month, which is pretty exciting. I mean, basically the best Raws of the year between now and WrestleMania is at least what's been happening in the last few years, as they start to build up and some familiar faces return to build up the big matches of WrestleMania 29 this year in New Jersey. In terms of recent episodes of Raw, tomorrow's edition of Raw is going to be the first live episode in 2 weeks, because last week's episode was the New Year's Eve edition, and the week prior was the Christmas Eve edition, and both of those episodes were taped. So first Raw live in a couple of weeks tomorrow.
Yes, for the Christmas Eve and New Year editions of Raw, we're going to talk about those a little bit later, more in depth, as there's a couple of talking points that need to be looked at. However, going back to the New Year's edition this Monday, let's look at some of the matches that appeared on that card. John Cena was billed as the guest star on Miss TV. However, they were rudely interrupted by the team of Rose Scholars, which ended up in a match, and John Cena and The Miz were victorious in that one. US champion Antonio Cesaro defeated Sergeant Slaughter. The tag team champions, the team of Hell No, defeated Three-Man Band. Mr. McMahon addressed CM Punk's WWE title match with Ryback. Sheamus won over Dolph Ziggler via disqualification. Divas champion Eve defeated Mae Young by forfeit. World champion Big Show, he defeated Ricardo Rodriguez via disqualification. Wade Barrett defeated the IC champion Kofi Kingston. And there was big news of the return of Randy Orton after Ryback, Sheamus, Randy Orton brawl with the Shield. And also John Cena crashed Dolph Ziggler and AJ's New Year toast. But Alan, what were your thoughts on this show?
Yeah, it turned out to be a relatively noteworthy show for some, positive reasons and negative reasons. One of the big talking points of the show was the WWE Championship picture. Of course, CM Punk with the knee injury. Announced as of last week's edition of Raw that CM Punk would defend the WWE title against Ryback in their match that was originally scheduled for the TLC pay-per-view last month. In fact, they will have a tables, ladders and chairs match on Raw. Vince McMahon coming to the ring after CM Punk brought his own physician to the ring to say that he couldn't compete in that match. Vince McMahon said that Punk would be addressed by WWE's own physician. And as announced on Main Event, CM Punk will be defending the WWE title tomorrow night on Raw, but Vince McMahon said if he wasn't, then Paul Heyman would have to defend the WWE title in CM Punk's place against Ryback in a TLC match. But thankfully we aren't seeing that, and thankfully we are seeing the return of CM Punk to in-ring competition tomorrow on Raw. Another talking point there, you mentioned that Mae Young had another match. I think that's her second match in the past 2 years, although she didn't actually compete, losing to Eve by forfeit. But the reason why was, in fact, that she was once again pregnant, and she gave birth again live on Monday Night Raw. But it wasn't a hand; she gave birth to a mini hornswoggle. So that was, I don't know, somewhat interesting. And yes, of course, Randy Orton returned. He was dealing with a separated shoulder, as he's got hypermobile shoulders. But he returned, saved Sheamus and Ryback from the Shield, and I guess perhaps we're building towards maybe a 6-man tag team match at the Royal Rumble. Ryback, Sheamus and Orton against the Shield. Only time will tell, but it seems perhaps that things are going in that direction.
2 points we want to cover there. The first one is the comedy angle over the Christmas shows. The viewers who watch these shows will remember the angle with Alberto Del Rio running over Santa Claus, and throughout the show WWE giving updates on the condition of Santa. And also, as Alan just explained, the comedy angle with Mae Young being pregnant again and giving birth again. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for a bit of comedy in wrestling because it makes the world go around and it adds some storyline, etc. But at the moment, when wrestling's really it's still at a low ebb, it's still not doing, what it perhaps should be doing. I think that they need to limit these comedy acts and put more wrestling into the shows, because all the time they're running these comedy acts, they're taking time away from the in-ring talent, or they could be using segments to interview the wrestlers to build up the matches instead, whether it's for the show or the upcoming pay-per-view. The Santa angle, I know it was a recorded show, but that for me was, I know it's Christmas and they've got to have Santa on the show, but they could have had, they could have that as a dark thing. Before the show they could have had Santa and they're doing stuff with the crowd, etc. The Mae Young thing, it's been done before. It's not a new thing now with Mae Young. It's for me, it's just a waste of valuable TV time. The second thing I want to talk about, which might anger a few of you, I don't know, was the return to the ring of Sergeant Slaughter. Now, nothing against seeing Sergeant Slaughter. Obviously, he's a legend in the world of wrestling, a former WWF heavyweight champion, losing to Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 7. But has he got to the point now where the talent in the WWE is so low that they have to bring out a 50-something-year-old ex-wrestler who's in bad shape and is making a bit of a mockery of the talent? Cesaro's a US champion now, and he narrowly avoids defeat to Sergeant Slaughter. I can't see where where they're coming from with this now. I mean, why couldn't he have gone up against another talent? It's taking away from the actual talent now, and I think they should really look at themselves and see why they're doing this, Adam.
Yeah, well, in terms of Sergeant Slaughter, I mean, we see him at least a couple of times a year anyway, and he usually ends up having 1 or 2 matches a year. It's interesting. I mean, the thing I don't like is when they just, of course they have to put over the new talent, being that they're, Hall of Fame veterans, etc. But, I mean, there comes a point where all these legends are just, continuously returning, but they're losing absolutely, each and every match they have. And it kind of takes something away from them, I think.
Yeah. I mean, maybe have, if you want to involve a legend, you think, well, having a legend being, in the something to do the match will build it up and make it more of a public spectacle. Maybe have, at the back, maybe Sergeant Slaughter going about his job as a road agent and maybe being viciously attacked by Cesaro or someone. But having him come to the ring and narrowly avoid, capturing the US title doesn't do anything for Cesaro for his career. It makes a mockery of him. Being nearly beaten by this 50, nearly 60-year-old, if not more, veteran. And and it does nothing really for the legacy of Sergeant Slaughter. I don't, have them in segments maybe, but in matches now that they should have enough talent there they can use without having to revert to all the old legends.
So we mentioned there that one possible match just at the top of my head based on what happened on Raw this past Monday. Possibly the Shield in tag team action against Sheamus, Ryback, and the returning Randy Orton. But let's look slightly ahead now, a couple of weeks to the actual Royal Rumble card, and there are no confirmed matches as such yet, 100% concrete, except obviously the 30-man Royal Rumble match. Yes, it's still 30 men. They've only done the 40-man Royal Rumble once. Now they don't look like they're going to return to that format. But also the WWE Championship match is going to involve The Rock. Of course, who will the champion be at the Royal Rumble? Well, it's looking more than likely that it will still be CM Punk. I don't think that's the most difficult thing to work out, and I certainly hope it's still CM Punk rather than Ryback when we arrive at the Royal Rumble. What were your expectations from a CM Punk Rock match? Because they really need to, The Rock, of course, is going to be on Raw this week. CM Punk's going to be defending his WWE title. They need to start the build-up this Monday, because there are only a few short weeks to go. And I know The Rock, between now and WrestleMania, has been booked for so many editions of Raw, so many editions of SmackDown. He's going to be involved in WWE TV, it looks like, so much more this year than he was last year on the road to WrestleMania. But what are your expectations from Punk versus The Rock?
Well, I think, first of all, the success of the Rock-Cena match from last year's WrestleMania, one of the big keys to that was the planning and the build-up to that match, with all the hype between Cena and The Rock. It went on months and months. It wasn't like a 3-week program that culminated in the match. We've known for a long, long time now The Rock would be involved in the Royal Rumble event. And I think it takes away from some of the talent that's already there, that he's going in without being in a WWE ring since last April, to getting, we're presuming he's going to get the title shot against CM Punk. I should think, really, the only way I can see is bringing him in is so he wins the WWE title. I can't see him coming to lose the title and then we won't see him again. I'm also concerned that if he does win the WWE title, I'm concerned as to how much we will see The Rock. How many title defences will he have? Will he keep the belt? If he does win, will he keep the belt until SummerSlam or Survivor Series, but hardly make any appearances? That's one thing that concerns me. I think The Rock's a credit to himself in the fact that he's kept in tremendous shape. He had a tremendous match against Cena, much better than I expected personally. But I think that they, have to look at themselves and think, well, is this a short-term fix, bringing The Rock back in, rather than a long-term game?
Yeah, well, I could easily see The Rock defeating Punk at the Royal Rumble, winning the title, and then going on to defend it against Cena at WrestleMania and losing to Cena in their rematch, which is, the perfectly logical thing to do. But I think
it is logical. But then again, they're bringing in The Rock, who's going to cost them no doubt is going to cost them a hell of a lot of money to bring him in. A lot of TV time to bring him in. And if he does win the title for him, CM Punk at the Royal Rumble, and then you think, well, if he is up against Cena at WrestleMania, he has a title for 3 months, goes up against Cena, drops the belt to Cena, they hug in the middle of the ring, and then you don't see The Rock again for another 10 years or something. That's what I think, it annoys a few people, is that they just seem to, the actual WWE writers don't seem to know what their long-term plan is for the WWE and the titles. They're thinking, well, how can we've given it to CM Punk for over a year now, and he's done a very good job of it, but we can't keep the title in pretty much longer, so we're going to have to give it away to someone else, but we don't really know who to give it to, so let's bring The Rock in, give him a run with it, build the publicity up, and then hope that we can drop it to Cena again at WrestleMania or someone else and start again. But for me, they don't really seem to have like a long-term plan.
I think if The Rock does win the title at the Royal Rumble, it is only going to be a short thing. I think he's booked for the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, which would imply that he's going to be defending his title in an Elimination Chamber match. or of course maybe going in the contendership elimination chamber match if he doesn't win at the Royal Rumble. But I think it will be just a short-term thing, because even though he's booked for all these Raw and SmackDown live shows and tapings, he's not going to be wrestling on house shows. And of course, the thing that you always see at a house show, at Raw house show, you see the WWE title defended. At a SmackDown house show, you see the World Heavyweight title defended. At a WWE show, or whatever they call the mixed house shows, you see both a WWE title match and the World Heavyweight Championship match. And of course, the titles don't change hands, but that's a big selling point of tickets, is you get to see the WWE champion, you get to see the championship defended, and The Rock isn't going to be on house shows. So I think, if he does win, then we're going to see 3 months of WWE Championship-less house shows, but I think that's about all they can stretch to in terms of, keeping the title away from house shows.
I think we're having, if he's not going to wrestle at the house shows, obviously we now know that house shows, the belts do not get dropped to house shows, unless you're TNA, of course, and they drop them a house show, win them back a house show, and the title's going to change 3 or 4 times between impacts. As far as WWE, we know that we go to an event and see a heavyweight title match on the card. We know that whoever's the champion walking in will leave as the champion. May not win the match, might get DQ'd, it might end up in a schmoz, etc. But with The Rock not wrestling, it cheats the fans, because all he is then is a TV champion. He's not putting in the air miles, going to the events and getting in the ring, and so that, thinking about that now, I've not really thought about it in that sense before. Thinking that if he's a champion, he doesn't do the house shows, he doesn't go around the country and defending his title. For me that stinks, really.
Well, that is the Royal Rumble coming up, and we're going to be discussing that on our next show, which will be the week before the Royal Rumble weekend. The next pay-per-view, though, however, in terms of the major promotions, is TNA Genesis pay-per-view, and there are a couple of matches confirmed at the moment. Chavo Guerrero and Hernandez are going to team up to defend their TNA tag team titles against Matt Morgan and Joey Ryan. This is a rematch from the last TNA pay-per-view, which was Final Resolution. I imagine Morgan and Ryan are going to go over here. And Jeff Hardy takes on Austin Aries and Bobby Roode in a 3-way for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Those are the only 2 matches confirmed for next week's TNA Genesis pay-per-view. But of course, both of those matches were announced on this past Thursday's edition of TNA Impact. And they were going similar to the way WWE is going about Monday's edition. They were trying to make it, as stacked a show as possible. We saw the return of Sting for the 8 millionth time. A steel cage main event as Aces and Eights took on Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe. And yet another member of Aces and Eights was unmasked. And it turned out to be, one of wrestling's worst kept secrets of recent memory, that Mike Knox was a member of Aces and Eights. And he's now been unmasked. So I guess we're going to be seeing Mike Knox in addition to Luke Gallows and Devon, and I wonder who's next to be unmasked. But that would yeah, could be. But that was those are the big talking points of Impact Wrestling this past Thursday. So that was TNA's big show to kick off the year.
So talking about big shows and pay-per-views, one thing I want to mention is the fact that if you go back a few years to the old Royal Rumbles and cards, any WWE event or WCW event really, we knew months in advance what the matches would be, barring maybe 1 or 2. They might add them to the card, but you would know the card. And it gives you more time to look forward to the event, to talk about the event. Because I remember sort of going, WrestleMania's turning up. We knew the card, a long time before the event. We knew all the matches. We knew who would be the championship picture. There'd be lots of segments building up to it, a lot of previews to it. And we'd already discussing at school, who's going to WrestleMania 8, say, Macho Man versus Ric Flair, and who's going to win, and who, the double main event, and we thought it's Sid versus Hogan, and who's going to win that one. It made it more exciting, whereas now you think, well, they've only announced, a couple of things for Genesis, matches for Genesis. You think, well, they've announced 2 matches for Genesis so far. We've already, the Chavo Guerrero and Hernandez tag match is a rematch anyway. Jeff Hardy versus Austin Aries and Bobby Roode, we've seen them three fight each other so many times before. I think with the pay-per-views, they need to go back, and certainly with the flagship pay-per-views, such as Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series, they need to make those events mean more. They need to make that Royal Rumble main event, the winner of the Rumble, they need to make that mean something. They need to make WrestleMania mean something again, because now it just becomes more of a spectacle rather than the wrestling mean anything. SummerSlam, some matches you had over the years of that, such as like Bret Hart when he won the IC title over Kurt Hennig, it meant something. It's talked about. Survivor Series, when you had the 4-on-4 matches or 5-on-5s, and they had a main event as the Greatest Challenge, Hulk Hogan versus The Undertaker for the championship. It meant something. You look forward to it. Now it's so. Who's buying WrestleMania? Oh no, not gonna bother this year. Or who's gonna watch SummerSlam? And no, I'm saving money. It doesn't mean the same as it used to, and you need to get that excitement up again.
Well, I think, the difference now, of course, is that unlike, when you refer to, 20 years ago or something, and again referring to those as the Big Four, those were the original pay-per-view events. Now, there never used to be 12 pay-per-views a year from WWE and TNA. So now, of course, there's less build-up because they have cards to book and build up to every single month, as opposed to, okay, this program's going to go all the way from, however long up until Royal Rumble. Okay, this program's going to last from SummerSlam to Survivor Series, Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, etc. So, I guess, it's kind of obvious why there is a lack of build-up, but then again, you think, well, okay, there are so many pay-per-views, and it could be a bit of a hindrance.
If you have 12 months of the year and 12 pay-per-views, obviously they average out as one a month, obviously. You can have from then, well, we know that from, this is a problem, you see, where I think they have from the Royal Rumble ultimately leads to WrestleMania, because the winner of the Royal Rumble normally gets a title shot at WrestleMania. So between January, the Rumble, and end of March, beginning of April, I think they should say, well, between this time here, we don't need to worry about pay-per-views. We just scrap any pay-per-views between this time. I mean, what events pay-per-view wise come between Rumble and WrestleMania normally?
Just Elimination Chamber.
Elimination Chamber. Now, I know it's a popular event, but maybe rather than having it there, they could split it between another time of the year. So just have the Royal Rumble, have that, big build up to it, again, make an exciting event, and from then, whoever becomes the winner of the Rumble to face the champion at WrestleMania, really build those matches up, spend that first quarter of the year making WrestleMania the most anticipated event again, like it used to be going. Then once WrestleMania's done, you've either got a new champion, or the champion has consolidated his title, etc. Then you've got the road to SummerSlam, and then build up towards SummerSlam, rather than having all these events throughout the year, all these pay-per-views that don't mean as much, such as No Way Out, etc., all those sort of events. Have less of those, but make the Raws better, make the SmackDowns better, make more of a story in those weeks between those big events, and then they won't have to worry about filling in all these, for the pay-per-view. That's what I think, anyway.
Well, ironically, TNA's Genesis pay-per-view next week is actually their last pay-per-view until March. So they are actually doing exactly what we're saying here by, removing pay-per-views from the calendar, so they have more time to build up.
Yeah.
This lockdown will be the next pay-per-view event, and I can't remember the schedule following lockdown, if they are, going to leave, 2 or 3 months in between the next pay-per-view. But, so, it'll be interesting to see how lockdown shapes up, and how far in advance we're going to see the card for lockdown take shape, so they can, build upon that and drive the storytelling further to make that card, appear to mean something more than it usually does. And of course,
I mean, with advertising now, you've got free advertising for these events in some ways, because with the internet now, you go on Facebook and you type in, the Royal Rumble, and you get people talking on the wrestling side about the Royal Rumble, and they're all talking about it online, and one person emails another person about it, and there's all these banners on there, and everyone's discussing it. That's free advertising, so they can use those 3 months now just between events to get it out there, and just plan it and just keep planning it and tweaking it till they've got an event. I think, well, this is we've had Genesis, now we're on the road to lockdown. So let's look at let's just concentrate on lockdown now, build the TNA stories up, the storylines up to it, and then you've got lockdown, and then you can start again for the next one. Another thing as well is, how much in American dollars do the pay-per-views tend to cost now, say WWE, on average?
I think it's about $35.
About $35. So just looking at that, that's $420 a year. If you were to buy all 12 of them, which is a hell of a lot of money. And nowadays, people's disposable incomes aren't as high because everywhere in the world seems to be struggling a bit at the moment. That's a lot of money to buy all those pay-per-views. So just cut down on them slightly, but give people something they really want to see, and give them one chance to see it at WrestleMania, say, and they will spend their hard-earned money, and hopefully we'll have an event that they'll be proud to watch.
Well, we'll have to see what happens in terms of lockdown and whether the product improves and doesn't feel so, rushed. And also, of course, we'll be looking at the how well lockdown does in terms of pay-per-view buys when the time comes in March. Another pay-per-view tidbit here, just a quick mention, is New Japan Pro Wrestling. On Friday, had their first pay-per-view event of 2013, and it was their big event. It was a WrestleMania-sized show live at the Tokyo Dome. It was Wrestle Kingdom 7 Evolution, and it was headlined by Hiroshi Tanahashi defending his IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Kazuchika Okada, who was the Japanese equivalent of Mr. Money in the Bank. A huge pay-per-view. I ordered it, have it ready to watch. Haven't seen it yet. Of course, it only aired a couple of days ago. But I'm really looking forward to it, and the entire event actually comes close to 5 hours in length, so it's a pretty epic event, and I very much look forward to seeing that. But if you like Japanese wrestling, and you didn't realise that New Japan Pro Wrestling has been streaming its pay-per-views, not only live, but you can also order the replays for a couple of days after, then do look at the New Japan Pro Wrestling Ustream channel, and you can find all the ordering information there. But I definitely suggest you check it out. Or if you haven't even been introduced to Japanese wrestling perhaps before, this show's been getting rave reviews, so this does seem to be like it will be a good introduction if you're unfamiliar with it. So next week's Raw then.
Yeah, next week's Raw, we've got the return of The Rock, the return of the Great One. As we already alluded to, they couldn't leave it in later if they tried, with the Royal Rumble being so close now. So, he's got to start, getting involved now rather than later, isn't he?
Absolutely, and this big show is basically, the first show of the year, and it's the very beginning of the road to WrestleMania 29. I can hardly believe we're here already, but we are on the road to WrestleMania basically, and the WWE Championship will be defended by CM Punk on Monday's Raw in a TLC match against Ryback. As I mentioned, this obviously was the original TLC pay-per-view event, main event. The TLC match turned into the Shield against Ryback and Team Hell No, which turned out to be a fantastic match. Most likely way better than we could ever see from Ryback versus Punk. But, perhaps The Rock will get involved after. I imagine something is going to go down between Punk and The Rock to build towards the Royal Rumble, or at least it should. This show is just going to be, it's looking at it now from a preview. What's been announced, it's a pretty big show, but also there's going to be plenty of surprises. I'm sure we're probably going to see Triple H. Maybe we're going to see The Undertaker. Maybe Brock Lesnar. They're really going to put out all the stops to make the road to WrestleMania mean something. And looking forward to seeing what does actually go down tomorrow.
Absolutely. I'm going to say something really blasphemous now to wrestling. And I think I'm probably the only person in the world that's probably thinking this at the moment. But in many ways, I actually hope that The Undertaker will not be on the WrestleMania card. A lot of you think, well, what the hell? The streak, not on the WrestleMania card. And the reason I say that is because we've not seen The Undertaker in a ring since the last WrestleMania. And for them to bring, to dust him off the shelf once a year and bring him back, for me, is, I'd rather not see him than to see him in a situation where he's brought back once a year. Last year was the same, wasn't it? We hadn't seen him for such a long time. And then he had his feuding with Triple H at the end, culminating in the Hell in the Cell match at WrestleMania. But if he's injured enough now, if he's retiring or he's injured and he can't do it anymore, I'd rather he went gracefully than him to just turn up once a year at WrestleMania, because I think apart from anything else, I think that takes away from WrestleMania.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree. I think The Undertaker, because he does appear so sporadically, and he has pretty much now just one match a year, I think it makes his appearances somewhat special, and he's still having great matches. I think in the last 5 years he's had the best matches of his career against the likes of Shawn Michaels and Triple H. The Undertaker is pretty much confirmed for WrestleMania. He does have an opponent in place.
But if they're gonna have WrestleMania, then if he's at the point now where he can only wrestle very sporadically because of health reasons, etc., I don't know what the situation is, then surely they should, to make it more of a thing, they should build it up 6 months in advance. They should have him doing stuff, whether it's on promos or segments on the screen or interrupting matches, etc. They should have him doing something 6 months in advance to put it in the minds of the people. Just to have him turn up, at the Royal Rumble just as other Rockies, to me that just, I just disagree with, their mindset, The Undertaker. If you're going to use him properly. If he has to be used sparingly wrestling-wise, then that's fine. But they did the same with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yes, when he couldn't wrestle, okay, he couldn't have a wrestling match, but they could still use him in segments and comedy segments and still in the eye of wrestling. But for The Undertaker, just use once a year, and for the fans to see him sort of 12 weeks before WrestleMania and him to disappear, I don't agree with that personally.
Well, let's take a look now at the mailbag. Of course, as we were concentrating on the best and most memorable moments of 2012 in the last episode, we didn't go into the mailbag, but we've selected a trio of questions from the mailbag this week, ready to answer. Thanks as always for sending them in. And if you'd like to send in questions for the next episode, please do. Just send an email to hottagmailbag@yahoo.com, and we check through every single question, and we just... we discuss the questions that we receive amongst ourselves and talk about the ones we'd most like to answer, and that's how they end up on the hot tag.
Okay, we'll start off with this one. It just says, this one from Tom Crane, and he says, with Sergeant Slaughter making a return to the ring on Raw last week against Antonio Cesaro, do you think it's a sorry state of affairs that WWE has to keep bringing back the old faces? Well, Tom, thank you for your question. We alluded to this one earlier on. Yes, I do. I've got nothing personally against the legends come back in. They are what made wrestling, and for me, if it was back in the days of Sergeant Slaughter, the wrestling world would be a much better place. But the fact is, if it's a 2-hour show or a 3-hour show or 1-hour show, they've got a lot of talent there that they need. WWE needs, TNA needs. Their TV time is precious to them. They need to put across all their talent they've got on that TV screen. Now, if they're telling me that they couldn't find another talent to face Antonio Cesaro and make it mean something, and for a decent match, then it is, as you said, Tom, a sorry state of affairs. As we said earlier, it's okay to have them in the background, and it's lovely at WrestleMania to see all the old stars come out and the Hall of Famers, the Hall of Fame ceremony, etc. But when you've got so much talent costing you so much money in the back, not getting on the TV, it's for the indies. I feel sorry for the indies as well, because these indie promotions build a lot of these stars up. A lot of these stars of tomorrow are coming up. The WWE sign them because they realise their potential, and they sit in the back rotting. I mean, there's many stars you think people would love to see and love to wrestle, but they never get a chance now because WWE would rather put Sergeant Slaughter out there to play someone rather than one of the talents.
Well, in general, I mean, seeing these stars back, I mean, I think it's always nice to see them, return. We haven't seen them for a long time, but I think that, we even have these themed legend shows now, like, I think there was a Super SmackDown Live last year, where it was basically just all about the legends, and, we usually just see the same old selection. And, okay, it's fun to see them every once in a while, but I do think we see them too often, and it does take something away from them when they do come back. And perhaps lessens the reaction to them, and they perhaps sometimes possibly come off worse for wear because they are they do make such frequent appearances. So I generally don't mind seeing legends return, but I wish it wasn't just so often.
Well, what did they say? I mean, what do people say now about Antonio Cesaro when he narrowly escaped the Cobra Clutch to keep his to win the match and win and barely walk away with his US title? What does it say about Antonio Cesaro? What does it say about the US title? The same thing happened weeks ago when CM Punk, Vince McMahon had to come out and wrestle because of the state of the WWE's ratings. He had to come out and fight CM Punk. Now, Vince McMahon, nearly 70 years old, regardless of how fit and healthy he is, how muscular he is, beat the crap out of CM Punk. Now, CM Punk is the champion of his company. And what does that do for people's view of CM Punk and the WWE title? It kills it for me. It kills it. I'm not saying sizist again and saying that the bigger wrestlers should always beat the smaller wrestlers, etc., and all those sort of things. But when you have a 60-something-year-old man beating up the WWE champion and making a fool of him in the middle of your ring, it's all wrong for me.
Well, the next question then is from Tara Winton, and she says, talking about the Royal Rumble still, as the Royal Rumble is fast approaching, what are some of your favourite Rumble match moments?
My favourite, I'm a very biased here as Adam will tell you. My favourite wrestler of all time was the late great Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. Gone too soon, gone nearly 10 years actually in February. And one of my favourite Royal Rumble moments was actually the 2002 Royal Rumble, where Kurt was given a temporary contract. Basically, almost as what we've said before. Really, he was they brought him in as an old face, even though he was still wrestling, professionally wrestling with not long left WCW. Was when he came down to the ring and he actually put the perfect plex on Kurt Angle right in the middle of the ring. And you sort of saw the old generation of, one of the best technical wrestlers that's ever lived against probably at the time, if not now, the greatest technical wrestler that's ever lived, Kurt Angle. So to see the two contrasts in periods, that was a good moment there. And he also did very well. And he did so well, in fact, that WWE actually gave him a proper wrestling contract. That was one of my favourites. What about you, Adam?
A couple of moments that instantly spring to mind have actually been from very recent Royal Rumbles, 2012 and 2011, because of the way that a couple of superstars have been very innovative in the way in which they have stayed in the Royal Rumble. Last year, of course, Kofi Kingston was, just as it looked like he was going to be eliminated by, I do believe it was The Miz, he did a handstand and walked on his hands over to the ring steps on the outside and saved himself from being eliminated, which was extremely unique to say the least. And John Morrison in 2011 was knocked off the apron, landed like Spider-Man on the crowd barrier, and jumped onto the ring steps from the crowd barrier and saved himself from elimination. And those are two big moments that do come to mind. Other moments, I mean, over the years we've had the I think it was 1998 when we saw all three faces of Foley in the same match, Mankind, Dude Love and Cactus Jack. Although of course that was basically three Royal Rumble spots shared by the same person, but nevertheless it was kind of fun to see. What else was there? There's Ted DiBiase, actually, he's known for, I think it was the 15th anniversary show of Raw. He IRS won a Battle Royal, but it turned out that Ted DiBiase did after he gave IRS a briefcase full of cash to win that match. Shades of when he bought the WWE Championship from Andre the Giant. And in fact, Ted DiBiase also bought the number 30 spot in the Royal Rumble many, many years ago. I think it was in the late 80s.
I mean, another time as well was the basically the Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior feud, which culminated at the title match at WrestleMania 6, Toronto, when the Warrior became the WWE champion and beat Hulk Hogan clean 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring. That all started at the Royal Rumble, and Hulk Hogan sort of, eliminated him almost by accident, really. That caused that. I mean, when Ric Flair was the first man in and won the Royal Rumble, that was a great moment as well. That was a fantastic moment in Royal Rumble history. Was it also the Royal Rumble, or was it just the Battle Royal when Lex Luger and Bret Hart went over the top rope at the same time, and their feet touched at the same time? Was that a Royal Rumble?
Yes, it was. Yeah, Royal Rumble. Yeah, it was. Yeah, now that you mentioned that. That
was a great moment because you think they've wrestled the whole match and their timing had to be so precise and so spot on. Otherwise, the whole thing would have been blown up. So that was a great Royal Rumble moment. Perhaps you'd like to tell us your favourite Royal Rumble moments, and you can find us on Facebook. Just type in the Hot Tag Podcast and message us there, or just post on the wall your favourite Rumble moments and your questions in general for us as well. Also, Adam, people can email us, can't they, at
hottagmailbag@yahoo.com. And we've got one more question in the mailbag this week, and it pertains to the aforementioned Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, who has just announced, as Ben Scott asks, Ric Flair just announced that he's going to be returning to the ring in a tag team match in Japan. Thoughts? Well, yes, Ric Flair just announced that he's going to be wrestling for All Japan Pro Wrestling, teaming up with the Great Muta in a tag team match. Flair returning to wrestling for the first time since he departed from TNA. It's actually an interview I read about probably a month ago, where he said that he wasn't going to wrestle anymore because he was kind of left shaken by the Jerry Lawler heart attack, which of course took place about an hour after he wrestled the match. Flair said in an interview that was it. He's thinking about his health. He doesn't want to do it anymore. The risks have kind of been driven into him. But now he announces himself heading to Japan to compete in a tag team match. So clearly, didn't leave him shaken enough to go back on what he said in that interview.
No, I mean, one thing that actually annoyed me with Ric Flair originally, I know we all know wrestling's obviously at work, in a sense of the storyline, etc. But any indie wrestlers out there, any pro wrestlers out there listening, obviously prefers to tell us how tough it is. We all know how real it is in the ring. However, it angered me when Ric Flair had such a build-up to his retirement at WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels. He handpicked Michaels. It's a fantastic match. They gave a hell of a send-off with the Hall of Fame, etc. He had the whole caboodle. I doubt that the way that Ric Flair was received by the wrestling world when he retired will ever really happen again, even for stars such as Triple H and Undertaker. I don't think it will mean as much as when Ric Flair retired, because I think the greatest wrestler ever to step through the ring. And then he went to TNA, which, okay, fair enough. You go to TNA, maybe as a manager, etc., or as a face for the company. But then he got back in the ring, and that annoyed me, because if you're saying you're retiring from wrestling, and WWE give you a hell of a show, hell of a send-off, out of respect, I think he should have, at that time, said no more wrestling, just as respect. Same thing Shawn Michaels has done. Shawn Michaels retired, gave his word, no more wrestling. He's never been, in the ring since, wrestling, apart from refereeing WrestleMania. But, the thing with Ric Flair is, we know Ric Flair's a player in the ring and outside the ring, and I think he probably just needs the money to it. I think they've probably shaken a huge carrot at him for a lot of money, and he probably just needs the money. I know that they were moaning in TNA that when they on the European tour, he left a lot of places with a lot of bar tabs needed paying, and they had to chip in. So perhaps this financial situation means it's a must for him. But I mean, he's certainly getting on now. But I suppose as a one-off event, if he knew about this a long time ago, and it gave him the chance to build up his stamina, etc., and work on his physique, and practice taking a few bumps here and there, and he's prepared for it, then as a one-off, it's okay. But if it's not been planned well, then it could be a bad move for him, because he's getting on now, and his body's not going to heal as much as well as it used to. So, but only Ric Flair knows what's going through Ric Flair's head. But I can't say if it's a wrong decision or a bad decision, really, because Ric Flair is Ric Flair, and Ric Flair does what he wants anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I was, I was kind of frustrated when he did decide to wrestle for TNA, because, like you said, it was kind of disrespectful, because he has had the biggest retirement ceremony and festivities in the history of wrestling. Most likely that will be the biggest send off in the history of wrestling forever. So to announce that he's going to return to the ring again after TNA, I guess it is in Japan, it's not in the States. I think in Flair's mind he's retired from WWE in a sense, and it kind of doesn't pertain to companies like TNA and All Japan Pro Wrestling or Japan as a whole. I'm sure they did offer him a lot of money to come in, especially to work an international event. I don't know. Flair's as unpredictable as ever. He is getting on. He is too old to be competing now. I mean, I'm sure he's still good in the ring. Maybe this could be a really good match, because it's All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's more centered around wrestling, rather than basically being made a mockery of like he was in TNA. Having no standout matches and being his character there descended into a bit of a parody of itself, and he was basically old man Ric Flair, rather than Ric Flair, the number one of all time, like he was in his final few years in WWE. But I'll probably watch this match at some stage, and I guess we'll just have to see what happens. But
I think the bottom line is something that Chief J Strongbow said once, and I think it rings very true. In this business, it's not what you make, it's what you save. And I know Ric Flair made a lot of money, and I don't think he saved any of it. So that's the bottom line, really, as opposed to that. Okay, well, should we move on to this week's competition?
Yeah.
Last show, we ran a competition, and we asked you who played the famous gobbledygooker that hatched at the Survivor Series. I think it was 1990. The answers were, was it A, Howard Finkel, B, Brooklyn Brawler, or C, Hector Guerrero? And many of you entered this competition, so thank you very much for that. The winner, proud to announce, was Matt Greenland from Dayton, Ohio. And your prize will be on its way to you very shortly. This week's competition, we are giving away a copy of the Royal Rumble 2012, last year's Rumble, on DVD. And Alan, the question is?
Yes, keeping with the Royal Rumble theme, the question for this week is, who won the first ever Royal Rumble match? Who won the first ever Royal Rumble match? Was it A, Hulk Hogan, B, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, or C, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair? If you know the answer, just send it to hottagmailbag@yahoo.com, or send us a private message on Facebook. You can find us on the Hot Tag Facebook page. Just search for the Hot Tag Facebook, and we'll announce the winner on the next show of Royal Rumble 2012 on DVD. And speaking of DVDs, actually, just announced TNA has a new DVD licensee in Europe, and yes, it is actually Silvervision. Clearvision's Silvervision label isn't going to die. Silvervision has been, well, not resurrected, but is still going to go. It's still focused on wrestling, except it's now TNA Wrestling, or Impact Wrestling, whatever the company is actually called. So yeah, we're going to be seeing TNA DVDs on the shelf with the Silvervision logo on them, which was a bit of a surprise. TNA's previous licensee was Lace DVD, and I wasn't actually aware that the agreement there had expired, but apparently it has. So now TNA working with Silvervision in the UK, Europe, and I think the Middle East as well, which is basically the same as the WWE license.
Well, I think the problem is with TNA is they, as soon as WWE drops a wrestler or anything like that, they just want to pick it up. Doesn't matter what it is, they just want to pick it up and be involved with it, basically.
Basically.
Adam has been writing recently for none other than John Bradshaw Layfield, JBL to you, the wrestling fame. And he's been writing for the Layfield Report. So I've got Adam to tell you a bit about that first, and then we're going to have a discussion about one of the Adam segments he's been writing on. So Adam, take it away.
Yes, LayfieldReport.com, where you can find some great wrestling news, celebrity news, entertainment news, financial news, and world sport news. That site run by John Bradshaw Layfield. I mentioned this a few weeks ago when I did an article on the CM Punk heart attack angle and why I liked it so much, a very controversial angle at the time. And I just started my own personal top 25 villains in wrestling history list, and everyone loves the list, especially as it pertains to pro wrestling. And it's a 10-part series going through 5 names apart, posted every other day on LayfieldReport.com. And I thought, although, so far we're 2 parts in, 10 names have been revealed from my list, so I can't go into any more detail other than the already announced 10 names, but I thought, this would give us a chance to discuss discuss these names so far, and also, Ed, to discuss your own personal favourite wrestling villains of all time. And so far on my list, we've been counting down from 25 to number 1, of course, and in descending order at the moment revealed on my list in part 1 and 2 have been Hollywood Hogan, Kane, Kurt Hennig, Ted DiBiase, Sr. of course, The Undertaker, Edge, Chris Jericho, William Regal, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Jake the Snake Roberts. Those are the 10 names so far, and I've written a little bit about every name there you see. Just go to LayfieldReport.com to look at those articles. So far, out of the 10 names, what do you think of that? And who would you put in the top 25? Who are your favourite heels in wrestling?
Well, first of all, like any a report like this or anyone's opinion of this, there's never ever going to be a right or wrong answer to anything, because this is obviously your opinion, isn't it? Your opinion.
It's actually fact.
Of your 25. I've got my opinion 25. Every other reader out there will have his opinion on 25. Starting with Hollywood Hulk Hogan is 25. Hulk Hogan obviously was a huge heel when he came in. I've never seen another wrestler have as much crap thrown in the ring at him as when Hulk Hogan turned in 1996 to join the NWO. Whereas, you've got Kurt Hennig here as 23. Personally, I think that you've got to look at the heels that have tried to emulate Kurt Hennig since. People like Shawn Stasiak, a young man called Dolph Ziggler. Terry Taylor originally wanted to be the Mr. Perfect character as well. So I think the fact that so many people have tried to emulate him, perhaps he deserves to be a bit higher. We don't know. Ted DiBiase Sr. here, what a great, the millionaire angle. Vince McMahon originally, Vince McMahon ever became a wrestler, he said that was the actual role he wanted to play himself. That was his role. You've got The Undertaker here too. Let's look at we've had here, you've got Edge, Jericho, Regal. You've got Bobby Heenan here as number 17. And Bobby Heenan could be the ultimate heel, really, because Bobby Heenan is one of those wrestlers that has never been in the wrestling industry, and he's probably one of the only people that's ever been a total heel through the whole of his career. Well, if you look at people such as Ted DiBiase, when Ted DiBiase, before he came to WWE, was actually a babyface, and was due to get the NWA heavyweight title, but he was screwed on that one. But I mean, Jake Roberts has been a heel, you got here, a face as well. So Bobby Heenan has always been the bad guy. But there are some, I mean, people like, Gorgeous George, who was the real first proper sort of heel. Roddy Piper was, considering that he wasn't the biggest wrestler in the world, his bad guy persona really brought him through. Buddy Rogers, without Buddy Rogers, would there have been a Ric Flair? Vince McMahon, when he was made, without knowing it, he was turned to a heel overnight, and he ran with it. He became a fantastic heel. But in some ways, and not that he should be in the top 25, but maybe looking at someone like John Cena. Now, John Cena is not a heel as in what we know as a heel, but he's certainly, to half the audience at every show, he's a bad guy because half the audience boo him. They don't like him. So what is it about John Cena that people don't like? But certainly there's a lot of names conspicuous by their absence at the moment, but I'm sure they'll turn up on the list. Obviously, I'm privy to the list, but I can't mention it to viewers because it's not been on the Layfield report yet. But there is no right or wrong. Perhaps you'd like home would like to give us your maybe your send us in your top 10 heels of all time and why, because we will know what you think as well. So you can send that to our email address and also post it on the podcast. So send us your ideas. We'll look forward to seeing the rest of your report, Adam.
And that about does it for this episode of the Hot Tag here on goic.net. Thanks for joining us as always. Hope you've enjoyed our very first show of 2013. Our next episode is going to be on Sunday, January 20th, which is the week before the Royal Rumble. TNA Genesis is next week. We're most likely going to be talking about this pay-per-view on the next show as well. If you're watching TNA Genesis, by all means enjoy it. Hope Raw tomorrow is a bit of a cracker. And if you're watching the NJPW Wrestle Kingdom 7 pay-per-view, I'm going to be watching it just as the new week begins, so looking forward to that. Let me know what you think of that. Let us know what you think of that. Just email hottagmailbag@yahoo.com or visit our Facebook page. Just search the Hot Tag Podcast. Thanks, as always, to Barry Wilkinson at episode3.co.uk for the logo. And, thanks for listening. We will see you on January 20th.